In the summer of 2004, the world watched in awe as the Abyssal Queen prepared for its maiden voyage, a marvel of engineering and opulence. The cruise ship was unlike anything ever constructed before, a submersible behemoth over 400 meters long, shaped like a gliding manta ray, reinforced with carbon titanium alloy, and capable of diving to a staggering depth of 5,000 meters. Built by the deep-sea engineering firm Thalassa Corp in partnership with private luxury investors, it was heralded as the next frontier in oceanic tourism, a floating, submerging city for the wealthy, the curious, and the daring. The voyage would span 21 days, descending gradually along the mid-Atlantic ridge before navigating through the Azores Plateau and finally diving into the hadal depths of the Puerto Rico Trench. The ship would stop at underwater habitats, glass-domed research outposts, and even a sunken World War II U-boat memorial. On the evening of August 3, 2004, the Abyssal Queen departed from the Lisbon undersea port, a recently constructed terminal that jutted into the Atlantic like a tooth of chrome and steel. Aboard were 212 hand-selected passengers and 48 crew members, a microcosm of human ambition, privilege, and intrigue. Among them, Dr. Helena Murov, an acclaimed marine biologist with an obsession for deep-sea extremophiles. She'd lobbied hard to join the voyage, despite her university's warnings. She carried with her sealed vials of dormant bacteria, and more questions than answers. Noah and Eliza Caro, newlyweds from California, gifted the trip as a wedding present by Eliza's tech billionaire father. They live-streamed everything from the moment they stepped on board to their awkward, tipsy tours of the ship's pressure-proof honeymoon suite. Victor Lutz, a former oil rig supervisor turned underwater safety consultant, hired by Thalassa Corp to oversee last-minute operational checks. He wasn't supposed to stay on board for the full voyage, but after a strange systems error during trial dives, he insisted. Daniel Reyes, registered in the manifest as a travel photographer. Quiet, observant, always alone, no social media, no past that anyone could trace. His real name wasn't Daniel. His camera didn't just take pictures, it had sensors for electromagnetic interference, thermal anomalies, and radio frequency scanning. He wasn't here to enjoy the views. He was here for something buried in the trench. The ship itself was a spectacle. 6 levels, all pressure-resistant. The top deck, called the Horizon Lounge, was a panoramic dome of reinforced transparent alloy, offering surreal, shifting views of marine life, lit by the ship's slow-moving glow panels. Beneath that, restaurants, spas, private suites, a theater, and a submersible drone command center. Everything was sleek, silent, and heavily automated. For the first 4 days, the voyage was flawless. The descent was slow, steady, and breathtaking. Passengers marveled at glowing siphonophores and jellyfish that pulsed like living chandeliers. They sipped champagne 3,000 meters beneath the surface. There were dance parties, lectures, a chef who prepared meals based on the ecosystems they passed. But on the 5th day, something shifted. First, the ship's internal clock began to drift by. Only seconds at first, then minutes. Communications to Lisbon became intermittent. A soft but constant hum began to echo through the hull, a frequency that no one could locate. Yet everyone felt headaches, nightmares, a growing sense of being. Watched Dr. Morov's lab equipment recorded thermal flares rising from the trench, unnatural patterns pulsing in intervals like sonar, but too rhythmic to be geologic. A maintenance worker found strange scratches near the aft observation deck, long sweeping gouges in the alloy, as if something enormous had brushed against the ship. On the 7th day, at 4,860 meters, all communication ceased. The ship disappeared from all known tracking systems. Satellite links went dark. The descent log ended mid-sentence. 212 passengers, 48 crew, lost. For 5 years, the world speculated. A reactor implosion, hull breach, sabotage, something classified. Families demanded answers. Governments deflected. Conspiracies bloomed like coral. But on October 13, 2009, a sonar ping was detected from the depths of the Puerto Rico Trench. It was faint, distorted, repeating, a digital heartbeat, and a short, corrupted transmission. This is the Abyssal Queen. We are not alone. We are not. Then, silence. A deep-sea rescue mission is commissioned. They send Orpheus 9, an unmanned recovery drone, to investigate. The drone descends, past known limits, guided by the last coordinates. And there, 5,170 meters below sea level, on the edge of an abyssal plain, it finds something, not wreckage, not a hull, but the Abyssal Queen intact, lit from within, resting quietly, waiting. August 6, 2004, Day 3 at exactly 6:44 ship time. The Abyssal Queen passed the 6,000-meter mark, breaching the invisible threshold into the Hadal Zone, the deepest, least explored region of Earth's oceans. The announcement came with fanfare over the ship's internal comms system. A pre-recorded female voice, pleasant and rehearsed, welcomed the guests to one of the planet's final frontiers. Congratulations, dear passengers. You are now among the very few to have entered the Hadal Deep. Enjoy the journey. And remember, down here, the rules are different. Polite applause followed. Champagne was poured. A string quartet in the Horizon Lounge began playing a haunting, echo-laced rendition of Claire de Lune. But beneath the elegance, something was shifting. Dr. Iris Kenning, a 38-year-old marine biologist from the Royal Institute of Oceanography, stood hunched over the sonar analysis console in Lab 2, located midship near the pressure labs. She hadn't slept. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. The display showed a series of returns, echoes that didn't match anything in the database. At first, she'd assumed equipment drift, a calibration issue due to depth compression, but now, they were moving. The patterns weren't static. They shifted position every few minutes, sometimes overlapping. Some were small, but a few, were larger than any known organism in recorded history. Too slow to be currents, too soft for submersibles, and there was no seismic activity to explain it. Kenning recorded the data, labeled the files, and flagged them for cross-referencing. She stared into the sonar stream. There it was again, a large return, a shape, stationary, then suddenly gone, not drift, evasion. She called the bridge. No response. The system lights flickered up on Deck 3, in the crystal atrium. Passengers sipped cocktails beneath artificial starlight, a curved ceiling programmed to mimic the night sky above Lisbon. The dome flickered once, twice, then shut off entirely for 13 seconds. A few guests laughed nervously. Others murmured. Someone dropped a glass. Crew reassured them it was a pressure-related recalibration and would not impact the itinerary. But there were other issues. Noah Caro, recording footage for his honeymoon vlog, caught something strange on video while standing in front of observation deck A. His footage glitched, skipping several frames, and showed a warped ripple along the corridor walls, like a heat mirage underwater. He replayed it, over and over. Each time, the ripple grew a fraction more distinct. Behind the ripple, something sliding across the distant shadows. Eliza told him to stop. She was getting a headache. She said the lights had been humming, not the bulbs, she insisted. The walls, like they're breathing. By that evening, gravity briefly failed in the upper dome suites. Just for a moment, no more than 5 seconds, but enough for floating silverware, spilled wine, and screams. The crew called it a ballast fluctuation, something about the air pressure in the compartments misfiring during automated trim. But Victor Lutz, now seated in the engineering substation, had a different take. He'd seen the ballast readings. The pressure was stable. The ship had not lost weight. It had been pulled downward, briefly, like a tethered balloon, yanked by something from below. He didn't say this to the guests, not yet. But he did message the captain. No reply. When he opened the secure diagnostics, he found a locked file, encrypted, time-stamped, before launch. Access denied. Lutz stared at the screen. What the hell was this thing built for? In her lab, Dr. Kenning ran the sonar again. This time, the signal came in clearer, stronger, a deep, pulsing tone. Not like the usual echo returns. It almost sounded like a call, repeating in a long, low rhythm. But it wasn't just sonar anymore. Her headphones, still connected, picked it up audibly. Not a wail, not a seismic bloom. This was deliberate. It had structure, it had language, and it was getting closer. She hit record. Then the lab lights went out. 3:11 a.m., internal maintenance log. Sublevel CA technician named Rafi Patel was dispatched to investigate. Strange wall bulges in a maintenance corridor adjacent to the pressure buffer tanks. He logged in, took photos, then sent one final message to the engineering core. There's something inside the hull wall. I can hear it, like metal, shifting. Then nothing. No screams, no camera feed, just silence, and a long smear of red across the lens. August 7, 2004, 3:12 a.m. There was no alarm, no dramatic explosion, no klaxon scream across the decks. Just a whisper, a mechanical sigh from the ship's backbone. Then, silence. The control bridge, manned by Captain Henrik Vols and his operations officer, was bathed in a sterile blue glow from the holographic readouts. The ship's artificial intelligence, Mari, had just confirmed entry into the Puerto Rico Trench. Depth recorded at 4,862 meters. Everything was holding dot then. In one silent moment, everything stopped. The GPS grid flickered, distorted, then blinked out. Location, null. Sonar readings jammed, showing nothing but a rising wall of noise, a wall that stretched upward, not downward. The ocean was not silent anymore. It was alive with something. The audio system picked up a vibration, low and long, that pulsed through the reinforced hull like a heartbeat. It was subsonic, inhuman, not seismic, not man-made. Captain Vols reached for the distress signal. Nothing responded. He tried the redundant comms link, the satellite channel, the encrypted naval emergency band. Dead air. He opened his mouth to speak to his second-in-command, but she was already frozen, staring at the data feed from engineering. Every system had gone dark. Power, auxiliary, even backups, all reported. Active, yet unreachable. Like they were present, but somehow sealed off. The final log of the ship's internal system was saved at 3 hours, 12 minutes, and 4 seconds. Time-stamped in Mari's core. The last data entry was a compressed burst of white static, followed by a low-frequency thrum, barely audible, but picked up through the hull's vibration sensors. That recording lasts 11 seconds. Then the system freezes. No further entries. The logs end, mid-packet, ABYSSAL, Queen. Gone. Surface Command, Lisbon Undersea Portat, 313. A senior analyst at the Lisbon monitoring station, Miguel Soriano, noticed a blinking red marker on the ship's telemetry feed. A simple code, loss of signal. He zoomed in, tapped the backup. Sonar returned, but it was blank. The GPS coordinates had frozen a minute earlier, locked in place above the trench. He blinked, tried to refresh, then watched as the entire tracking system for the ship blinked once, twice, and disappeared. From the Atlantic network, no crash, no explosion, just erasure. Underwater observation post, TETHYS, for at the Deep Sea Research Station. TETHYS, for 270 kilometers away and 3,500 meters below. Scientists monitoring the mid-Atlantic floor received a sound pulse at 3:14, a signal so low, so strange. It disrupted their internal hydrophonies. It wasn't geological. It had intervals, a pattern. Dr. Miria Kwan, the lead technician, listened to the signal for 3 minutes before turning to her assistant and saying, "That's not an echo. That's a reply." They logged the anomaly, time-stamped it, and attempted to contact the Abyssal Queen for correlation. No response. At 5,000 meters below inside the ship, time did not vanish, it slowed. Passengers were roused by the sudden absence of artificial gravity. Water in cups floated lazily. The lights dimmed to orange, then red, then pitch black. The entire hull creaked, as though the ocean were exhaling against it. Dr. Iris Kenning reached for her tablet. It didn't respond. No emergency lights. No override. Only the sensation shared silently across every hallway, room, and corridor, that the ship was moving, not by thrusters, not by drift. It was being drawn downward, by something colossal and unseen. A child cried in one of the family suites. Victor Lutz, trapped in the maintenance deck, tried to force open an emergency hatch, but it felt welded shut from the outside. Noah, Caro, holding his wife in a lightless corridor, whispered that he saw shadows forming in the glass of the observation dome, like silhouettes peering in. Dr. Mir, unconscious in the lab, never heard the sample containment shatter. The creature within one of her vials, a dormant, unknown extremophile from a drill core at 11,000 meters, began to glow faint blue, and Daniel Reyes, in his sealed cabin, activated his personal tracker. It didn't transmit, but he wasn't surprised. He just muttered, under his breath, "It's here." Global response timeline, August 7, 2004, 3:12 a.m. Last data signal from the Abyssal Queen received by Lisbon Undersea Port, 3:14 a.m. Interference disrupts regional sonar buoys and military surveillance nets, 3:17 a.m. Satellite feeds lose thermal and electromagnetic trace of the vessel. 3:25 a.m. NATO dispatches a long-range submersible scout from the Azores. 4:11 a.m. A single ping echoes from the Puerto Rico Trench. Untranslated. Faint. Then. Nothing. No debris. No distress call. No power surge. No wreckage. Just absence. In the years that followed, theories bloomed like algae. Pressure failure, reactor breach, mutiny, corporate sabotage, even alien contact. But nothing ever surfaced, literally or figuratively. Then, in 2009, on a quiet October evening, a deep-sea listening post in Bermuda picked up a signal, a distorted, corrupted loop, 6 seconds long. "This is the Abyssal Queen. We are not alone. We are not." Then, silence. Once again. The OSV Harbinger cut through the Atlantic swells like a blade, painted storm gray with no identifying emblems. It moved without fanfare, without escort. From the outside, it resembled a standard offshore supply vessel, a support ship used to ferry equipment to oil rigs or research stations. But inside, Harbinger carried no cargo. It carried silence and secrets. The covert mission had been green-lit less than 48 hours earlier, following the detection of a faint, distorted acoustic ping emanating from the Puerto Rico Trench, a signal that matched the Abyssal Queen's encrypted beacon signature, long thought disabled at full submersion. Officially, the signal never existed. Unofficially, it triggered Protocol Erebus, a black-class directive issued through NATO's Deep Sea Anomaly Response Task Force, known by only a few names and even fewer passwords. Harbinger was dispatched under cover of nightfall. The team was lean, surgical, carefully chosen. Commander Lena Brooks, 42, a veteran naval investigator with 2 decades in suboceanic recovery. She'd led deep retrieval missions off the Norwegian Trench and oversaw the extraction of the downed Russian sub K-312. Cold, precise, composed under pressure. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she'd seen things in the dark that defied radar. Her eyes hadn't stopped moving since they left port. Rashid Noor, 29, civilian contractor and ROV specialist. Born in Karachi, trained in Tokyo, fluent in 6 languages and 5 drone systems. He piloted Dagger 1, a heavily modified deep-sea, remotely operated vehicle designed for abyssal depth surveillance. His hands moved like a pianist's across his console, even when his voice was dry with anxiety. Dr. Luis Ortega 51, leading authority in undersea acoustics and bioacoustic anomalies. Formerly a consultant for deep whale migration patterns, now subcontracted to defense science. He was the only one who had heard the loop from the lost cruise ship. He kept a digital spectrogram on his personal tablet and played it nightly, hoping it might change. It hadn't, not yet. The Harbinger reached the designated coordinates at 1927 hours. The trench mouth yawned beneath them like a wound, a drop of over 8,000 meters. Straight down into the crushing dark. The ocean was calm, too calm, no birds overhead, no wind, just the low rumble of the engine and the occasional creak of the hull. Commander Brooks stood at the observation bay, watching as the sun bled into the horizon. She didn't speak, just tapped the glass twice. Her signal, deployment commenced. 1945, descent begins inside the command pod. Rashid initiated launch protocols for Dagger 1. The ROV slid from the deployment ramp with the fluid grace of a creditor descending into the deep, trailed by its fiber optic tether, a translucent thread vanishing into blackness. Floodlights flared to life. The seabed vanished, only particles, drifting, endless. Luis Ortega watched the readings come in. Temperature plummeted, pressure climbed. The hydrophones began picking up low, deep static, oceanic white noise, the kind you normally tuned out. Except, this time, it was structured. Luis adjusted the gain. The sound didn't just pulse. It oscillated, like a phrase, repeating across kilometers. Like language, trying to mimic human sonar, not speaking to them, calling depth. 5,173 meters. The trench walls began to narrow. Visibility was poor. The abyss pressed in on all sides, like a vice. Dagger 1's floodlights barely pierced more than 20 meters ahead. Then came the first anomaly. A reflective surface, smooth and curved, caught the edge of the beam. Metal. Rashid angled the drone forward. The light revealed a section of outer hull plating, glossy white and ocean-worn. A distinct logo, Abyssal Queen, scored and burned, but intact. Gasps echoed through the command center. They had found it. Visual contact. The ship was there, or at least, part of it. Suspended slightly above the trench bed, as though caught in a slow descent that had somehow paused. Sections of the cruise liner's upper deck remained shockingly pristine. Observation domes, lounge balconies, even shattered handrails. Coral and sediment clung to the structure like dust over forgotten furniture. But it wasn't right. Rashid moved Dagger 1 along the starboard flank, and that's when they saw it. No impact craters, no structural breach. The vessel hadn't crashed. It had settled, placed, almost deliberately, on the edge of a subterranean slope, like an offering. Then the ROV's camera feed, glitched, not a malfunction, not bandwidth loss, but interference, rhythmic, jagged, and increasing. Luis Ortega leaned in. The acoustic log was lighting up with new anomalies. The original signal was no longer passive. It had changed. It was responding anew. Signal was rising from beneath the cruise ship, deeper than the trench floor. A pulse so low, it nearly vibrated the Harbinger's whole topside. Brooks gritted her teeth. Is that a geological vent? Ortega shook his head. No, not geothermal. He turned to her, voice quiet. That's not from Earth's crust. That's from below it. Then the raw feed caught something. Movement. A light in the interior of the ship, faint, cold, bluish, flickering in one of the sealed stateroom windows, followed by another dot, and then another dot, not electrical, not LED, organic, almost bioluminescent. Brooks stepped forward, whispering, "How the hell is there power?" Ortega corrected her. "There isn't." At 21:03, Dagger 1 sent its final image, a figure standing behind the observation dome, human in shape, perfectly still, head tilted, as if watching. Then the screen exploded into static, and every monitor aboard the Harbinger went dark. August 15, 2004, 4:47 a.m., Atlantic coordinates, 1945 N, 6645 W depth, 5,174 meters. The OSV Harbinger sat still above the abyss, its engines idling low, as if afraid to disturb the water. Aboard her, under flickering red cabin lights, the search team had gone silent. Sonar had found it, not wreckage, not debris. The entire Abyssal Queen, fully intact, resting like a sleeping leviathan at the edge of the Puerto Rico Trench. Her massive hull, bleached pale under floodlight, lay tilted at an angle, her bow pointing down into deeper blackness, like she was being drawn forward but never quite allowed to fall. No breaches, no signs of trauma. She wasn't crushed by pressure. She hadn't imploded. She was just there, waiting. 5:22 a.m. Rav, descent begins. Rashid Noor, tense and wide-eyed, piloted Dagger 1 and Dagger 2 down through the inky black. The twin ROVs cut through the water like sharks made of light, their search beams revealing the ghostly shape of the submerged liner below. The cameras panned across the hull. Everything was still, perfectly still. The once luxurious cruise liner was covered in a thin film of silt and particulate matter. Fish circled the edges, but none approached. The sea itself felt hesitant. The crew gathered around the feed in silence. The observation domes were uncorked. Dining halls still held polished silverware. Pool decks were filled with cold, unmoving water, a single deck chair still upright. Children's toys floated inside sealed playroom. A waiter's cart stood halfway down a corridor, abandoned mid-dash turn. Everything was preserved as if time had paused. But there were no people, not a single body, not in the suites, not in the corridors, not on the bridge. Dr. Luis Ortega leaned in. As Dagger 1 panned across a stateroom, a half-eaten meal sat beside an overturned glass of wine. The food hadn't rotted. No marine life had touched it. "It's as if they all just stood up and walked away, mid-bite," he muttered. "Commander." Brooks said nothing. She just stared at the monitor. The data log showed no distress signals from the ship, no evacuation orders, no pressure loss, no internal fire. Every life pod was still docked. The ship had never tried to flee. 6:47 a.m. Boarding approved, despite the unease. The decision was made. They had to go down. The drone feeds, while extensive, were failing to transmit beyond certain decks. Static interference was increasing, as if something on board was resisting digital intrusion. A manned dive was authorized. Personnel manifest. Commander Lena Brooks, Dr. Luis Ortega, Engineer Tamush Greer, Tactical Specialist, Corporal Celine Rourke, transported in a THENA-1, a custom titanium-hulled submersible with electromagnetic shielding and sealed internal oxygen tanks. 8:12 a.m. Tooch descended with a slow, mechanical hiss. The Harbinger's silhouette disappeared into the gray fog above. As they touched down on the starboard service platform of the Abyssal Queen, the exterior pressure hull of the cruise ship loomed over them like the skeletal remains of a sleeping god. The boarding clamp extended. A soft metallic thump echoed through their suits as a THENA-1 magnetically sealed to the airlock module. Brooks keyed the interface. It should have been dead. Instead, with a groan like an old door waking from slumber, the inner lock cycled and opened. Atmospheric pressure normalized. Interior lights flickered on. 8:19 a.m. First footsteps. Commander Brooks stepped first onto deck 4. The corridor was sterile, clean, dry. Her boots echoed on the floor. The sound traveled too far, too clearly, like the ship had been hollowed out inside. The team spread out, flashlights sweeping across pristine walls. Ortega stepped into a lounge area. Dozens of seats still held personal items, scarves, books, sunglasses. He walked past a dining table set for 2, plates half-eaten, the utensils untouched, the wine uncorked. Tomasz scanned the structural support beams. No collapse, no corrosion. Temperature is regulated. Climate control still running. Celine Rourke found a family suite. Toys on the bed. A teddy bear seated in front of a blank TV. A child's drawing taped to the wall. But no one there. Not even clothing. Not even signs of panic. It was as if the passengers had evaporated into the air. 9:42 a.m. Secondary anomalies that reached the bridge. Every terminal was offline, frozen, in standby. The navigation screen showed a looped static replay of the last recorded coordinates. Puerto Rico Trench. Stationary. The captain's logbook sat on the command console. The final entry was dated August 7th, 3:11 a.m. It ended mid-sentence. Reyes just told me something is moving beneath us. I've locked down the pods. We need to. That was it. Just a smear of pen, no Reyes. Was listed in the crew manifest. But all 4 of them knew who it was. Back in the corridor, Ortega found a section of wall lightly vibrating. He removed his glove and placed his bare hand against it. The vibration was rhythmic, measured, like breathing, like a heartbeat. 10:06 a.m. Final transmission. Commander Brooks opened her radio channel to the Harbinger. Base, we've made entry. No signs of life. Vessel intact. Environmental controls stable. 0 bodies. 0 evac. Standing by for further instruction. She waited. No response. Tried again. Nothing. TOMASZ. Checked his comms. Signals gone. No uplink. No static. Just. He paused. Dead air. Behind them, somewhere deep within the lower decks, a faint sound echoed up the ventilation. Shaft thought it wasn't metal. It wasn't water. It was something else. Soft footsteps. The corridors were too quiet. Not just silent, sterile. Sound didn't travel right. Even footsteps felt muffled, swallowed into the walls. Dr. Ortega paused beside a structural beam. He tapped it lightly with his gloved knuckles. Thunk. Then, beneath it, something answered. A low reverberation, so deep it could only be felt, not heard. It pulsed through the deck plating and into his bones. He narrowed his eyes, adjusting his scanner. "Commander," he called, picking up subharmonic vibrations. Around 14.2 millihertz. That's below whale song. That's not natural. Commander Brooks frowned. Machine? No. Organic pattern? Almost like coded speech, layered into the metal itself. Across the ship, Rashid Noor, still topside with a secondary ROV interface, froze mid-step in the observation. Deck dot. He blinked there. Silhouetted against the dome glass was a small figure, a child. White dress, short dark hair, just standing, watching him through the fog. His breath hitched. He stepped forward. "Hey, wait." But by the time he reached the dome, it was empty. No footprints, no heat signature, nothing. He turned, heart-pounding. Behind him, faint and far off, came the sound of laughter, not cheerful, not human, just wrong. He pressed his radio. "Brooks, I just saw something." A kid looked right at me. The radio crackled. Only static, and beneath it, if one listened closely, if one really strained to hear, whispers. thin, overlapping, and endless, like voices caught inside the pipes. The data core was half dead, a nest of flickering monitors, glitching holopanels, and blinking orange warnings. Ortega crouched beside the primary console, gloves gliding across the touchscreen with slow precision. The interface protested, with a corrupted chime, but something caught his attention. A file. Partially deleted, encrypted, but sloppily. Someone scrubbed this manually, he muttered. Not from the mainframe, from an external terminal. Like they didn't want anyone to know this line even existed. Commander Brooks leaned in. A file, a passenger. Manifest entry number 113. Overwritten, then buried in temp cache. He tapped a few commands, and a blurred photo emerged. A man, mid-30s, staring straight into the camera. No smile, just those flat, dark eyes. Name, Daniel Reyes. But that was crossed out beneath layers of code. The real ID surfaced. Dr. Adrian Varga, former UN marine geologist. Classified clearance. Last seen 2 months before the Queen's departure, declared missing in Geneva. Brooks's jaw clenched. Varga was involved in Project Kairos, that deep-sea dig off the Porto Rico Trench, the one they denied even existed. They lied, Ortega said softly. A secondary log popped into view, Varga's final known data transmission before boarding. They found something buried beneath the trench. Not natural, not dead, either. They shouldn't have disturbed it. I need to warn someone. They're watching. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered again. A low groan echoed through the hole, metal shifting, moaning, like something breathing. Rashid's voice cut in over the radio, urgent, shaky. Guys. Someone just logged into the observation deck controls, from inside the sealed bridge. But we locked that room. Brooks turned to Ortega. Tell me this ship didn't just wake up. He didn't answer, because in the corner of the monitor, the image of Adrian Varga blinked just once, then vanished. August 15th, 2004, 4:39 p.m. Lower deck engine compartments and ballast systems. The air was different down here, thicker, heavier, smelled of rust, brine, and something else, something organic. A faint scent of wet stone and decaying algae. Commander. Brooks led the way through the tangled maze of hydraulic pistons, ballast tanks, and humming conduits. Every footstep echoed wearily, like the metal itself was listening. Rashid swung his flashlight through the darkness. Why would anyone come this deep into the ship? The ballast chambers are automated. Unless they weren't using it for ballast, Ortega replied, or for the ship. They reached the far aft section, a heavy maintenance hatch, sealed tight with a rusted emergency lever. No markings, no ID code. The blueprint showed nothing beyond this bulkhead. Was this added after construction? Brooks asked. Ortega scanned the welds. No, this was broken through from the inside. He pried the lever. It groaned, then gave way with a sharp hiss. The door creaked open, revealing not a room, but a tunnel, hand-carved. The walls were jagged, rock-and-board steel. It sloped downward into the sea floor. Water dripped from the edges. No lights, no cables. Just a dark, slithering descent, tunneled by human hands, or something close enough. Jesus, Rashid whispered. They dug through the hull. A faint draft emerged, cold, carrying with it a low rhythmic thrum, almost a heartbeat, but deeper, more resonant. It passed through the bones more than the ears. Brooks raised her cum. Harbinger, this is Brooks. We've found a breach leading into the trench bedrock. Unauthorized, artificial. This wasn't in any design. Silence. She tried again. Still nothing. Ortega's scanner picked up traces of radiation, electromagnetic surges, and movement. Slow, shifting, far below. Rashid's flashlight flickered, and in that flicker, for just a second they saw scratch marks carved along the tunnel walls. Not from tools, from claws. The tunnel curved downward into silence. the air growing colder with every step. No light except for the faintest shimmer ahead, a glow not cast by bulbs or bioluminescence, but something deeper, unnatural. Then they reached it. The rift carved into the bedrock like an open wound. The rupture pulsed with an eerie phosphorescent light, a shimmering oval floating in midair, neither solid nor liquid. It cast no shadow, just rippling luminescence, humming at a frequency the mind rejected. Rashid stood frozen. That's not human-made. That's not possible. Floating inside the rift were objects thought a shoe, a silver wristwatch ticking impossibly out of sync, a wine glass spinning slowly in place, a child's drawing suspended mid-fold, and then people, dozens, their bodies adrift, not dead, but not awake, suspended in perfect stillness, eyes half open, expressions locked mid-blink or mid-scream. Time inside the rift was fractured. Some moved like slow liquid, others barely registered motion at all. Brooks stepped closer, breath trembling. My God, it's the passengers. Ortega's scanner lost calibration. The readings pulsed wildly, jumping between timestamps and sensor data from 5 years ago. A voice came through the static, a passenger log entry from a woman who hadn't been heard since 2004. We shouldn't have come down here. It hears us when we sleep. Suddenly, the light dimmed. A pulse swept through the chamber, like the rift had taken a breath. The tunnel behind them groaned. Ortega's voice was a whisper. Something's in there with them. They all turned as the phosphorescence warped, bending inward like it was aware, watching, listening, and then a pair of eyes blinked open inside the rift. Not human, and not alone. To speak in voices, not their own. Lena and Ortega initiate a controlled implosion of the artificial tunnel, sealing the rift. But the entity resists. Only 2 survivors make it back. The black box footage is corrupted, but Ortega's analog journal and sonar graphs remain. They prove the crews encountered a spatial temporal anomaly linked to the oceanic trench, something non-terrestrial, predating human history. Weeks later, deep-sea listening stations pick up a new signal, the same low-frequency hum, now repeating worldwide, as if marking locations. And one passenger, the child seen in the observation deck, appears in a remote coastal village, alive, but unable to speak.